It was great. And I'm not just saying this. I think that was the most engaged audience I've ever played to. I could hear them laughing throughout the movie more than usually you hear audiences. I could hear them engaging. I could hear them, getting emotional at times during the movie. And, the applause afterwards was amazing. So this was truly a fantastic audience. And I had so much fun, and it sounds like they had fun too. Well, when we're in the studio, we record the music like one piece at a time. Not just like even within a piece, you'll break it down and you'll get section by section. So something that you might think of as one piece, like the planetarium piece of music in the studio, 2016, we are getting, we'll just focus on the intro. Let's just get through measure 30 and we'll just do that until we get it and then we'll move on. And live, you have to get it all and all the way straight through. You can't go back. You can't redo it. The music the whole movie goes straight through. And so it takes, first of all, it took a lot of adaptation. I had to do a lot of work back in 2017 when I put this show together to make sure that the music could be played all the way through, because it wasn't designed to be played all the way through. And then when I come and work with a new orchestra, we have to rehearse it. So the day before the concert, even the day of the concert, I'm working with the orchestra and we're practicing it. We're making sure that we can, that we don't have to stop, that we can get all the way through each piece of music. So that's stressful. The rehearsal is the most stressful part of me, getting a new orchestra up to speed, new jazz band up to speed. And then when we get to the concert, that's actually, we have to do our job, but hopefully by then we know it and it's less stressful for me. Well, I mean, so much of it, of course, is the movie. Damien made a movie. He wrote and directed a movie that speaks to so many people. I think a lot of people relate to this movie. The idea of dreaming and, having even an artistic goal or not artistic goal. I think so many people, they want to do something with their lives, and this movie speaks to that kind of passion. And then there's the relationship side of it, which I think a lot of people relate to. That kind of the love that didn't work out, but people come into your life and out of your life and for a reason. And I think both of those themes really speak to people. So this movie really connects with a lot of people. And then the music hopefully is a part of that and sticks with people and reminds people of the movie and of those ideas and of those emotions. So it all goes together. And I think that's kind of the magic of this movie, is the story and the music, and it all, it kind of came together in a very special way. And it's years later, it's just amazing to me that 8 years later, that people still care about this movie the way they do and come out and want to see it live and still watch it at home and listen to the music on Spotify or whatever. Yeah, it was really kind of lightning in a bottle, the way that Damien's script and the direction and the music and all the art that's in the movie, the production design and the costumes and the colors, and it all just kind of, that's direction. That's Damien's direction, to make something that just gelled like that and came together like that into a piece. It's just this big piece that sticks in people's minds so well. Damien and I started working on the music, and he was writing the script and I was writing the music about the same time. He already had the scenario, I guess you'd call it. We call it a treatment, which is like, a few pages, just the story written out into some paragraphs. So he had that. He had figured out the basic story. And then he was writing the full screenplay and I was writing the music. And they were both coming along together. And it was many years of work. And he would rewrite the script many times and I would rewrite the music. And we'd write a song and we'd think it was great. And then we'd throw it out and start over again. And we'd do that over and over again for years. And yeah, then eventually you get to that point where you're shooting and then that part is done. And then you just have to focus on editing, and then there's all this new music you have to write. You know, we focused on the songs for all these years as he was writing the script and I was writing the songs, and me and Sebastian's theme. But then you get to the post-production and suddenly you have all these new scenes. You have, you know, Sebastian talking to his sister and in his apartment. You have all these new scenes and you need new music underneath it. So it's a whole new phase of it, and you have to just keep building it and building it. So Damien and I are building it, script and songs, and then suddenly you're building it. I'm building the score with the scenes and all of that. And you just keep building and building until years later you have a finished movie. And it's kind of, it's all just a whirlwind, really, how we make these movies. But at some point it's done. And years later, you know, you finally have a perspective on it. So it's funny that 8 years later, I still am remembering the process of like where this piece of music came from and that piece of music, because it was all at the time it was all very blurry, but now with some perspective on it, I can sort of remember, oh yeah, this came from there and that came from there, and it was just a many year process. We started working on it in 2011. That's when he gave me the treatment or the scenario. And that's when he started working on the screenplay and I started working on the songs and trying to figure out me and Sebastian's theme. I think I wrote, after many tries, I finally found D, 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 D. I can't hum, I can't sing, but that theme, I think I found that in 2011. And some of the other, maybe a half or a third of the songs that are in the movie, I found those basic melodies around 2011, 2012. And then we had to put the project down because nobody wanted to make it. So around 2012, we had to put it down. And that's when we made Whiplash. So for the next couple of years, we made Whiplash. And then suddenly studios were more interested in what Damien wanted to make next. So we finally got to make La La Land. We brought it back. We went into a whole nother phase of writing, rewriting. We threw out about half the songs we had, started over from scratch. About half the things we kept and about half the things we started over. And that's where some City of Stars came in that second phase. So 2014, 2015, when we picked the project back up, that's where City of Stars, Another Day of Sun, about half the songs were new and half the songs were old, and we picked it back up, and from there through 2016 we finished the movie. That's a good question. I mean, I guess when you're writing a song, you have to think about the character more. When it comes to score, often you are thinking about the character, but it's in a more abstract way. If it's music that goes under a scene with the character, it's not as like literal a connection. Sometimes in score, you might have a theme that is a more general idea in the movie, that can work with the character under their speaking. You work it in around the dialogue, but with a song, it's like if they're going to be singing it, it's like literally an expression of them as a person. So you really have to think about that character and what they would be saying and what they'd be thinking at that time. So yeah, just kind of the emotions you're going for, maybe a little different, a little more literal when you're writing a song. And then the process is very different in that a song, you have to write it and record it and all of that before you even shoot the movie so that they can sing it or lip sync it on set. Whereas a score, if it's just instrumental underscore, you don't really approach that until after you can watch the scene. Watch the whole movie or watch the scene and just kind of respond to what you're seeing. So you watch it on the screen, and I play the piano while I'm watching the performance and just sort of noodling around under the performance and working the music around what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. That's a good question. I mean, inspiration, most of it has to come from the movie, has to come from the story, the characters, what Damien's written and what Damien shot. In terms of other composers, I'm very inspired by all sorts of composers, and I guess it depends on the project. So for La La Land, for example, French New Wave scores were a big influence. So Michel Legrand, the Jacques Demy, Michel Legrand musicals were huge for us, obviously. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, The Young Girls of Rochefort. Other French New Wave stuff like The 400 Blows was a big score. Love that score. George Delarue's work. Jules and Jim, Contempt. I know there are French titles for these that I'm not getting. I know the title for Contempt, but I forget it. Yes, Mépris. Anyway, these scores, like I've listened to so many times and been influenced. I remember since college, Damien introduced me to some of these movies in college, and they became big influences. Other musicals I grew up on, like some of the Disney musicals, like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Singing in the Rain. Classical composers for sure. You know, Tchaikovsky influenced me a lot for parts of La La Land. There are so many influences. The Beach Boys, like there are vocal arrangements in La La Land that are very Beach Boys inspired, in Another Day of Sun and elsewhere. So I think there are just so many things that go into your ear throughout a whole lifetime that they come out, you know, they're just always like swirling around, and they influence you, and they come out in different ways. That's a good question. I haven't thought about that too much. So much is like exactly the same as when we were 20 years old. So much of how I'm just at the piano doing demos, and I make a little recording on my phone and send it to him, and we go back and forth. That, honestly, it feels like we're in college still in a lot of ways. Other parts of the process have changed a lot as the movies have gotten bigger. And the crews we work with have gotten bigger, and now we have producers and studios and all these layers of people we deal with. So that has changed the process. I mean, just having resources to get to do what we imagine is that's one of the ways things have changed for the better. I remember recording our very first score for Guy and Madeline on a park bench, where there was no money, no time. I went to Bratislava to record that score, and we had 4 hours to record the entire score. So I got like 1 or 2 takes of everything. Basically, they would sight read the music, and then we'd either have to keep the first take or the second take. That was it. So now we get good budgets to be able to make the music, and we've been recording in Los Angeles. So just having resources to kind of to realize what you imagine and to be able to experiment. Like Babylon, there was a lot of experimentation, which I never got to do before, where we could just bring in ensembles and musicians and just try them. Let's bring in this trumpeter, let's bring in a second trumpeter, a third trumpeter, saxophone player, just try things and experiment, bring in different ensembles of percussionists. Let's bring in a group of African percussionists and Latin percussionists and just experiment and build it over the course of a couple of years. So to get the time and resource to be able to play around and experiment was very new for us in Babylon. So that's kind of a luxury that we didn't have before. So some things are exactly the same and some things are new for us. Mm-hmm. What is a signature? I mean, I think like there are certain there's certain musical DNA that people can probably hear from one score to the next, certain chord changes that I tend to come back to, and that also Damien, really responds to. So there are certain, musical moves that I know if he wants to feel something at this point, I know that there are certain phrases and certain chord changes that are going to give him what he's looking for. At the same time, I do want every score to really feel different and to feel like its own thing and to feel like it belongs only to that movie. So hopefully if you hear the Babylon music, like, you wouldn't mistake that for Whiplash music or La La Land music or First Man music. There might be a couple of cues that, kind of really come back to the same sound. But for the most part, hopefully a score, each of these scores really sounds like its own thing and like it really was made just for that movie. So it's kind of this balancing act of like being yourself and having your voice and your style and your sensibility when it comes to harmony and melody, but also finding a way to reinvent things enough that every score is really just its own thing and belongs just to that movie.